You are about to hear a story that many people in Bogalusa still struggle to believe. A story filled with allegations of drug trafficking, public fund embezzlement, illicit service brokering, and kickbacks from local businesses. Serious charges that all circle around a man once praised as the city's new hope. One morning, the entire city of Bogalusa witnessed a shocking scene. The youngest mayor in its history surrounded and escorted away by law enforcement as if he were a criminal. What was happening? Was it a misunderstanding, or was this another political power struggle where a few individuals became sacrificial pawns? Follow this story until the very end, and you'll understand every step of the investigation as if you were standing right next to the task force at the moment everything erupted. Please note that all information in today's video has been researched and compiled by the Vietnamese case files team from multiple sources. If you spot any inaccuracies or details that need correction, feel free to leave a comment so we can update and amend them. And if you enjoy mysterious detective-style stories like today's case, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can continue joining us in upcoming episodes. Bogalusa is a small city of roughly 10,000 people in Louisiana. Despite its modest size, the problems related to crime have only grown worse over time. Amid that backdrop, in 2022, Bogalusa residents placed their hopes for change in Tyrin Truong, a 3-year-old graduate of Washington University in St. Louis, after he pulled off a major upset in the election and became the youngest mayor in the city's history. Truong vowed to revive Bogalusa, reduce crime and corruption, and invest heavily in youth programs and local economic development. However, in less than 2 years, the city was shaken again, this time by news that its young mayor had become embroiled in a major scandal. The first signs of trouble surfaced in early 2024. Despite the mayor's claims that he was increasing police presence on the streets, crime in Bogalusa continued to worsen, with drug trafficking and violent encounters escalating. Unable to sit idle, in April 2024, the Louisiana State Police Narcotics and Violent Crime Task Force launched a large-scale investigation into a drug trafficking organization operating in the Bogalusa area. The investigation was conducted in coordination with the Bogalusa Police Department, the 22nd Judicial District Attorney's Office, and several other state and federal agencies. During surveillance operations, investigators discovered that members of this network were using Facebook and other online platforms to distribute illegal narcotics and receive payments. This method allowed them to expand their operations in sophisticated ways that were difficult to trace. The money generated was then used to purchase firearms and supply the black market. This meant that individuals legally prohibited from owning weapons suddenly had access to guns, which they used in numerous incidents across Bogalusa, further destabilizing the community. These findings alarmed investigators, as they revealed the dangerous intersection between narcotics, trafficking, and rising local violence. While the task force continued its covert probe, unexpected turbulence appeared in the political arena. In April 2024, the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office sent a formal warning letter to Mayor Tyrin Truong, stating that the Bogalusa city government had violated public finance laws by failing to submit its 2022 financial report on time. This delay occurred roughly 6 months after Truong took office. As a result, Bogalusa was temporarily stripped of eligibility to receive state and federal funding for infrastructure, public services, and public safety projects. Truong responded by blaming the previous administration for not handing over proper documentation. Nevertheless, the auditor's letter fueled public doubts about the young mayor's administrative competence. More importantly, it marked the beginning of an open confrontation between Truong and the court-appointed fiscal administrator assigned to oversee the city's budget. Specifically, toward the end of 2024, amid Bogalusa's increasingly questionable finances, the Louisiana State Court placed the city under special fiscal supervision and appointed Robert Bob Nielsen as the financial administrator. Nielsen had served as Bogalusa's auditor for nearly 20 years and only stopped when Truong took office due to conflicts between the two. Upon hearing the news, Truong tried to push Nielsen aside, even publicly declaring that he would fire him, though legally, the mayor had no such authority. Furious at having a court-appointed overseer managing the city's finances, Truong accused the move of being a calculated political takeover designed to neutralize an elected leader. The dispute between Truong and the fiscal administrator quickly became a heated local issue, leading to tense hearings and intensifying the turmoil within Bogalusa's political landscape. This chaotic atmosphere set the stage for a scandal that soon intertwined criminal allegations with issues of public governance. By mid-2024, two parallel undercurrents had formed within Bogalusa's leadership. One was the secret investigation targeting the drug trafficking network, and the other was a crisis of public trust surrounding the city's finances. Few could have predicted that both would eventually converge on one man, Tyrin Truong. Despite once promising to bring transparency and accountability to Bogalusa, the young mayor's rising career became increasingly clouded by suspicion. Rumors began circulating within the community about Truong's bold and at times reckless style of leadership. But only when law enforcement uncovered concrete evidence did the veil of mystery finally begin to lift, signaling a dark chapter for Louisiana's young political star. So, who is Tyrin Truong, and what kind of person was he before becoming entangled in this political storm? Born on the 10th of June 1999 in Mandeville, Louisiana, Tyrin came from a uniquely multicultural background. His grandfather was Vietnamese and immigrated to the United States after the war. His grandmother was African American, giving Tyrin a mixed Vietnamese and African American heritage. His mother, Kathy Truong, is a former U.S. Army soldier, a strong black woman, widely respected in her community. As a child, Tyrin Truong was an exceptional student. He earned a scholarship to Washington University in St. Louis, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States. At Washington University, he double majored in political science and African American studies, while actively participating in student organizations. His leadership potential soon became evident when he was elected student body president, a significant milestone that highlighted his emerging political aptitude. It was during his college years that the idea of becoming Bogalusa's mayor first began to take shape. Still, few believed that a 21-year-old could ever pull off such an ambition. Yet less than 2 years later, he proved it was possible. In 2022, after graduating, Truong turned down career opportunities in larger cities, returned to Bogalusa, and immediately entered the mayoral race. He faced two formidable opponents, incumbent Mayor Wendy Perrette, who had served for 8 years, and a longtime city council member seasoned in local politics. But Tyrin did not back down. He tirelessly knocked on doors, met with residents, and presented his plan for change. His message resonated deeply with Bogalusa's citizens, who were exhausted from years of stagnation. As a result, in the 8th of November 2022 election, Tyrin Truong won decisively with 56% of the vote, far surpassing Mayor Perrette, who received only 19% and securing an outright victory in the first round by exceeding the 50% threshold. At just 23 years old, he became the youngest mayor in Bogalusa's history, and one of the youngest mayors in the entire country at the time. His victory was seen as a refreshing shift, marking the arrival of Gen Z in local politics. The media described it as a stunning political upset, while voters hoped this young Vietnamese African-American leader would inject new energy into a city struggling with long-standing issues. After assuming office in early January 2023, Tyrin Truong immediately immersed himself in work with boundless energy. One of his first actions was appointing a new police chief, hoping to reform the department toward a more community-oriented and responsive public safety model. Truong also launched youth programs at local parks and community centers, hoping to create safe, healthy spaces that would steer young people away from crime. He also proposed initiatives to attract small businesses and redevelop abandoned buildings in downtown Bogalusa, confidently declaring, "This place is just as good as anywhere else." It only fell behind because of weak leadership. But as time passed, Truong's inexperience and lack of political maturity became increasingly apparent. The first issue was the late submission of the city's financial audit report, something mentioned earlier by us. The second came in the form of a lawsuit filed just months after Truong took office, initiated by former Mayor Wendy Perrette. She sued Truong after he refused to provide certain public documents during the transition period. In June 2023, the court ruled in favor of Wendy Perrette, ordering Tyrin Truong to hand over the documents and personally pay 100% of the legal fees and penalties for intentionally violating the state's public records law. The amount ordered by the court was approximately $4,650. Not large, but it was clearly a personal responsibility and therefore could not legally be taken from city funds. This legal defeat marked the first major complication of Truong's term, and unfortunately, he handled it in the worst possible way. According to investigators, Truong pressured an insurance company that provided services to the city to issue a check labeled as reimbursement for the exact amount he owed. He then instructed the finance department to deposit that check into the city's account, and afterward wrote himself a check for the same amount. By doing so, it appeared on paper as though the city had been reimbursed and that Truong merely withdrew funds for a personal expense advance. In reality, he had disguised city funds as reimbursement money to pay off his own debt. Worse still, before carrying out this maneuver, Truong threatened the city council, saying that if they refused to let him use public funds to cover the penalty, he would retaliate by flooding them with continuous public records requests to bury them in paperwork. This conduct was more than enough to constitute threats against public officials and clear abuse of power. And in matters of public safety, Truong soon clashed with the local police force. Bogalusa had its own municipal police department, but chronic lack of funding had long caused the department to be criticized for inefficiency. Initially, the young mayor supported increasing police patrols to deter crime, but by late 2023, faced with severe budget constraints, he suddenly proposed a shocking idea: dissolving the Bogalusa Police Department entirely and transferring all law enforcement responsibilities to the parish sheriff's office. Truong argued that this change would help save money and make better use of parish-level resources. However, the proposal struck a nerve and triggered strong backlash from Bogalusa's police officers. In December 2023, dozens of officers crowded into a city council meeting to protest Truong's plan, openly showing their frustration and fear for their future employment. Images of seasoned officers standing with folded arms in a packed meeting room, facing off against a 24-year-old mayor, quickly became headline news across local media. From that point on, Truong's relationship with the police deteriorated severely. Some observers even began speculating about conspiracy theories, suggesting that this conflict may have prompted law enforcement agencies to pay especially close attention to Truong's questionable actions. Now, let's return to the drug trafficking investigation in Bogalusa. Through technical surveillance, investigators managed to infiltrate the communication channels used by the criminal group. They identified a number of young individuals in Bogalusa involved in the network, including the Pittman brothers, a middle-aged woman named Tanya Stage, and several others. As the structure of the organization became clearer, investigators realized a troubling truth: the network was far larger and more organized than initially believed. According to Washington Parish District Attorney Colin Sims, the organization consisted of up to 20 members operating in a coordinated manner. They were not just selling common drugs like marijuana or MDMA, they were also distributing powerful and highly dangerous prescription painkillers. Because of this, the investigation accelerated with a new determination to root out the criminal organization entirely. And as investigators began tracing the flow of money and relationships among the suspects, they uncovered unusual connections to public officials. Most notably, several individuals on the suspect list appeared to have frequent interactions with city officials, particularly with current mayor Tyrin Truong. At first, no one knew what to make of it. Was Truong merely acquainted with someone in the group by coincidence, or was he actively involved in illegal dealings? But soon, objective evidence began to surface showing that Truong had engaged in transactions involving proceeds from narcotics offenses, a violation of Louisiana Revised Statute 40-1041, which prohibits dealings with illegally obtained funds. In simpler terms, Truong was suspected of receiving or managing profits from drug sales, possibly for money laundering or for sharing proceeds with members of the trafficking network. Additionally, digital evidence indicated that Truong had previously purchased illegal substances from individuals named in the investigation. The idea of a sitting mayor personally purchasing narcotics was already shocking, but law enforcement believed Truong was not only a customer, he was also providing protection for the drug network through the power of his office, a clear abuse of authority. Parallel to this line of investigation, police uncovered something else also linked to the name Tyrin Truong. In August 2024, Truong led the Bogalusa delegation to a national mayor's conference held in Atlanta, Georgia. The conference itself was legitimate, but what Truong did on the sidelines was far more concerning. Investigators obtained information indicating that during this trip, the young mayor used city funds to rent a luxury Airbnb apartment where he hosted a wild party that included the presence of a high-end escort hired exclusively for himself. This was enough for Truong to be accused of facilitating prostitution and embezzling public funds for personal use. Supporting evidence included the Airbnb invoice paid with the city's credit card and text messages arranging the meeting with the escort messages recovered from Truong's phone. By this point, the investigation had expanded from narcotics offenses to prostitution-related misconduct and public corruption, all revolving around a single individual, Tyrin Truong. These developments placed the task force in a difficult position, as the central figure in their criminal investigation was now the head of the city government. However, Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill emphasized a firm stance. Zero tolerance for wrongdoing, especially among public officials, and instructed all agencies to coordinate closely and gather airtight evidence before moving forward. To ensure confidentiality, the investigation into Truong was kept completely secret with no leaks to avoid alerting the forest before the strike. As a result, during the entire covert probe, Tyrin Truong remained unaware and continued presenting himself calmly before the public. On the 3rd of January 2025, just days before everything unraveled, Truong even delivered Bogalusa's State of the City address, highlighting his administration's achievements over the past year and reflecting on how he was still learning valuable life lessons at his age. He said, with notable emphasis, "Making mistakes is inevitable, and we have made mistakes. But I was always taught that when you stumble, you get up, dust yourself off, and learn from it." Few could have predicted that only 4 days after that inspirational remark, law enforcement would get up to act and Truong would stumble straight into the criminal justice system in the literal sense. And then the day arrived. Early in the morning of the 7th of January 2025, a large contingent of law enforcement officers stormed and surrounded the home of Mayor Tyrin Truong. Curious neighbors awakened by the commotion witnessed an unprecedented sight. The city's top elected official walking out of his house in handcuffs, escorted to a police vehicle as stunned residents looked on. But Truong was not the only one caught in the sweep. At the same time, Louisiana State Police and partner agencies arrested 6 additional suspects across Bogalusa, individuals already identified earlier in the drug investigation. They were Mackenzie Lynn Cefalu, Day Salim Wally Pittman, D. Rule S. Pittman, 22, Salahal Dien Malike Pittman, 26, Tanya Renee Stage, 51, and Devin Michael Williams, 28. All were taken into custody and booked at the Washington Parish Jail. In the days that followed, further arrests continued as authorities worked to dismantle the entire organization. At Mayor Truong's residence, police executed a search warrant immediately after taking him into custody. There, investigators seized several critical pieces of evidence, including electronic devices containing transaction records, a significant amount of cash suspected to be tied to drug activity, and multiple small bags containing white powder and pills found throughout the home. Officials confirmed that these substances included opioid-based painkillers, high-grade marijuana, concentrated THC products, and MDMA. Police also confiscated various documents and invoices related to city spending as part of the embezzlement probe. Meanwhile, searches conducted at the homes of other suspects yielded additional key evidence. At the Pittman and Cefalu residences, officers seized an arsenal of weapons, handguns, rifles, and ammunition. Many of these firearms were identified as illegal or previously used in violent incidents in Bogalusa. The stockpile of weapons and narcotics painted a clear picture of how large-scale the criminal operation truly was. Immediately after Truong's arrest, the Louisiana State Police issued a press release detailing the charges he was facing. According to the announcement, Truong was preliminarily charged with 3 criminal offenses. 1, transactions involving proceeds from drug offenses, and 2, unauthorized use of public property, and 3, procurement of prostitution. While held at the Washington Parish Jail, Truong's attorney arranged for him to post bond. The court set bail at $150,000, a substantial sum, but unsurprising for an official who previously oversaw a city budget worth millions. By the evening of the 7th of January 2025, Tyrin Truong walked out of the detention facility after his family paid the bond. Outside, a small group of relatives and supporters clapped and welcomed him, despite the media storm surrounding the case. Truong's mother, Kathy, tearfully insisted that the accusations against her son were nonsense and politically motivated. Meanwhile, inside Bogalusa City Hall, confusion and anxiety spread. The City Council convened an emergency meeting during which District Attorney Colin Sims addressed officials and residents to explain the situation. Attorney General Liz Murrill also released a public statement reaffirming that misconduct by public officials would not be tolerated and applauding the cooperative effort that brought the case to light. As for the Bogalusa city government, since no conviction had been issued, Truong technically remained mayor. Just days after being released on bond, he boldly returned to City Hall and resumed daily duties despite numerous calls for him to step down. This sparked a sharp divide in public opinion. Supporters argued that Truong is innocent until proven guilty, while opponents feared he might use his position to tamper with evidence or intimidate subordinates. In response, the City Council announced that special oversight measures would remain in place, and Financial Administrator Robert Nielsen would continue to control city expenditures, ensuring Truong could not independently access municipal funds. Nielsen bluntly stated that he and the mayor could not have a functional working relationship, but emphasized that his priority was preventing Bogalusa from going bankrupt, regardless of Truong's preferences. Amid the chaos, Tyrin Truong continued to insist on his innocence. On the 9th of January 2025, he appeared before the press at City Hall declaring that all allegations are misunderstandings and untrue, and that he would not resign because he still had important work to do for Bogalusa. But these reassurances did little to calm the public. For many residents, the shock and sense of betrayal were overwhelming. They had once hoped Truong would bring positive change, yet now their city was making national headlines because of a scandal of unprecedented magnitude. From being celebrated as the youngest Vietnamese African-American mayor, Truong had become a symbol of controversy and disgrace in the eyes of the public. But even though the situation was already shocking enough, the allegations did not stop there. Auditors discovered that Tyrin Truong had unilaterally taken salary payments and allowances beyond what had been approved, such as unauthorized vacation payouts not listed in his contract, and had also issued advance payments without city council approval. These actions constitute embezzlement of public funds, essentially, the misappropriation of government property. Another allegation claimed that Truong pressured a city contractor to make a payment to a third party that had not performed any work. In other words, he created or colluded with a shell company to receive money for doing nothing, then used his mayoral authority to force the primary contractor to transfer the funds. This was an extremely sophisticated form of public fund embezzlement. If proven true, it would show just how brazenly the youngest mayor in Bogalusa's history abused his power. According to the grand jury, Truong was also accused of hinting at demands for kickbacks from a business that had planned to invest in a major project in Bogalusa. This behavior could be interpreted as bribery or extortion. As a result, the company withdrew, costing the city a promising development opportunity. This may be one of the most damaging actions to the community, because due to the leader's greed, Bogalusa lost a major investment that could have created new jobs for local residents. The indictment also noted that Truong ordered public employees, a team of city plumbers, to perform repair work at his mother's house using city-owned materials for the job. In other words, he used public manpower and public supplies for his family's personal benefit. This conduct is not only unethical, but could also constitute theft or misuse of public assets, since government property was consumed for a private purpose. However, for now, all of these remain allegations, and Tyrin Truong continues to deny every charge. His defense attorney has dismissed the accusations as baseless and expressed complete confidence that Truong will prevail when the case goes to trial. So what do you think? Could that really happen? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the team at Vietnamese Case Files so we can continue bringing you more real-life stories that are gripping, thought-provoking, and full of twists. That's all for today's case. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.